Hi, my name's Louise and I'm a first year student nurse here at UEA. 5 weeks ago I was in my first placement as a student nurse, and as the medical ward I had been assigned to had the facilities to look after patients with infectious conditions. When COVID-19 arrived in the local area, we started caring for patients who were either suspected or confirmed as having COVID-19. And I watched as the whole team went from their usual ward routines to receiving updates on sometimes an hourly basis of what they needed to do next. And they began nursing from behind a mask. As the number of patients with COVID-19 increased, so too did the PPE requirements and the trepidation levels from both staff and patients. I was really lucky to be working with such a supportive team who, despite being unsure about what this pandemic might bring, were still able to provide a great learning environment for me. So when UEA very rightly took the decision to prioritise student safety and ended our placements early, I actually ended up feeling somewhat disappointed. So 6 days later, with the support of the ward sister, I was actually back on the ward, no longer as a student, but as a healthcare assistant. I've spent quite a bit of time since then thinking about what made me go back, and I realised that despite it being my first placement, throughout the theory and practice that I'd completed so far, I'd already learnt enough about the fundamentals of nursing to have something to offer both the team and the patients rather than being a hindrance. And as patient numbers started to increase and they became more unwell, the team started to shrink as they either had to start shielding at home or because they too started to develop symptoms. And I think that I was somewhat fortunate in that my gradual exposure to this pandemic through placement meant I didn't experience so much fear of the unknown that somebody who was completely new to that environment might have. So I found that I just couldn't sit at home. Since then, I've waited whilst the NMC and UEA have made decisions about what would happen to my education going forward, and I've watched as my peers in second and third year have had to make very difficult decisions as to whether they should opt in or out of extended placements. And I have a lot of respect for my colleagues who have decided not to opt in. Working on the front line, so to speak, is tough. Wearing full PPE for 12 plus hours is physically exhausting, but not knowing if it's actually going to protect you as you see your colleagues who have worn the same PPE as you start to test positive is emotionally taxing too. And caring for patients who know that they're getting worse rather than better and see daily updates on the news of the death toll and are scared that they are going to become a part of those numbers is emotionally really difficult. Listening to loved ones who are having to say their final goodbyes over a telephone because they can't be there in person, or looking after couples who have both tested positive hold hands whilst they know that one of them is in their last hours is so very emotionally demanding. And the relentlessness of this whole situation, not knowing if we've reached the peak yet, if things will start to get better soon, and what comes next, what happens after this. It is exhausting. Many of those who've opted in say that this is a calling and it's what they've trained and studied for. And they're absolutely right. For many, it is. Others, like me, might experience a sense of needing to do something. My experience working on these wards suggests that our registered colleagues will be so glad of their support and their help. The students who have opted in will bring with them a new energy and a level of enthusiasm that will help to buoy those who are already out there. And in turn, when all this is over and those who have needed to opt out will be able to return to placement, they too will bring with them a new, hopefully less weary outlook. But until then, we will continue to support each other. We'll continue to celebrate the small wins as well as the big ones, such as getting a whole ward together to applaud as we send a patient who was previously very unwell home. As students, when we began our programmes, we had the next 3 years planned out for us. We knew our term dates, when we would be in placement, when we would be in theory. We even knew when some of our assignments would happen. For some, this was of little relevance, but for my fellow mature students and those with children, this was incredibly important as it allowed them to organise their finances and plan childcare and put support systems in place. UEA have been great at rearranging the programme so quickly to try and ensure that we can graduate on schedule and that we know what's going to happen. As students, we are supported and we will continue to learn. We'll have an awful lot to reflect on once all this is over. And personally, I've had my desire to become a nurse put to the test very early on in my career. And it's been a really tough few weeks. But I've discovered through working with teams who have demonstrated unbelievable levels of adaptability and resilience, and from meeting patients who are nothing short of inspirational, that this is a profession that I'm passionate about and proud to one day become a part of.